Howdy again. I want to take you guys back for a minute to that song we just sang before our team walked off. There's some lyrics in that song that every now and then I just think it's good to actually go, hey, wait a minute, we just sang something. Is that our experience? Here's somehow what we just sang. I don't want anything else but you. I mean, we're in church, we probably, good majority of us say, yeah, that's true. I don't want anything else but Jesus. Okay. You're more than a dream come true. All the things I thought I wanted, they don't even come close to knowing you. Give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You skip down to the end and we just sang this. I don't want anyone else. I don't need anything else. You're my one thing. You're my one thing. You're my one thing. I just wonder if that's true for us. Because I know for me, some days it's true. And then some days there's just the lure of this world that would have me believe he's not my one thing. There's actually other things that I need. Like to say, I don't need anything else. I don't want anything else. You're my one thing. Like those are things that are easier to say than to live, easier to sing than to live. And sometimes, if you can remember back for some of us, when you started your spiritual journey, or maybe some of you, you're there now, like you're right on the cusp of it. Maybe you even came out of Easter last week and you're still just kind of toeing the water. You're not even sure how you would describe yourself yet. You're just kind of figuring this all out still. But there are many of us that early on, like when we first encountered Jesus, that was true. I mean, it was true in a visceral way. Like, I don't need anything else. I don't want anything else. You're my one thing. Everything I thought I wanted doesn't even compare to knowing you. And then over time, the world just tempts us away with so many other things that, well, I need you and this and that and him and her. And we just start adding all these other things, and suddenly we dilute the reality that truly all we need is Jesus. And when you have him, you have everything. And that's not just some weird spiritual idea. It is the promise of the God of heaven. If you have me, you have everything. And as we're talking about success today, I want to start there because I think that's a great framework as we think about what success actually is. Because it cannot be divorced from that idea that everything we want, everything we need is truly found in one place alone, and that is in Jesus. But the thing is, when we talk about success, we have a whole lot of different ways of trying to figure it out. We have a whole lot of different ways that we define what it actually is. And even though many of you may agree with me and go, yeah, it's all about knowing Jesus, let's be honest. You, like me, many days over, find yourself influenced to define success with a whole lot of other things that you think you need and you think you want that aren't going to ultimately satisfy, but we fall victim to it. But I have yet to find the person that doesn't want to be successful in some way in their life. We kind of define it differently. For some of us, you're like Moses. It's your shoe game. You want to have a good shoe game, then you're successful. Or it's the right job, the right zip code, the right marriage, the right kids, the right college for my kid. Like there's all the different ways that we define it. But nobody yet have I found in life wants to be the poster child for failure. Right? Nobody's like, I just hope my life counts for nothing and is a complete debacle. Like nobody. We all want some level of success. The problem is we're all running in different directions trying to figure out what it actually is. Is there a universal understanding of what success is that we can achieve, that we can get to? And if so, who gets to decide? Like who gets to say what is and what isn't successful? And how come it feels like sometimes you achieve it and then it's lost as quick as it's gained, or sometimes it feels like everybody else gets it and you don't get success? You get maybe reflections of it, but not the way you see it in other people's lives. It's a complex thing. And then you add to that this question, which will really be at the heart of what we're going to talk about for the next couple of weeks. If there is a quote that is the driver of this series, it is this quote. It's one that I read years ago from a man named Francis Chan, pastor, author, probably one of the most disruptive quotes I've ever heard on success. On your screen. Our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at things in life that don't really matter. When we think of success, we usually juxtapose it to failure. Those are only two options, either success or failure. But what if failure in certain regards actually is success? The things that we would call successful actually, in fact, in many ways could be lived the wrong way, lived for the wrong reasons, could in fact be failure. So here's what I'd love you to do. For just like 30 seconds, I'm going to give you a chance to do this. I'd love you to turn to somebody near you and see if in less than 5 words, Can you define and describe what success is? So kind of help me lay the groundwork a little bit before we get going. So 30 seconds, go. Some of you are like, well, success for me is coming to church and not having to talk to somebody next to me. So thanks a lot for that. There's a lot of different answers. There's a lot of different outcomes. I think there's a lot of confusion around what a life that matters when you talk about success actually is. So let me pray and ask that God would give us some clarity. So Jesus, come before you this morning and ask, Lord, that you would do what you do in such a good way as to be present and pressing yourself into this place and room, into all the places even that are maybe listening online right now. God, would you just speak in a way that is so clear that even if we don't know quite yet in our journey how to put our finger on the fact that it's you, would we just have a sense of an understanding, an awareness, an insight that seems other than us. And God, would you, I pray, use this story, the account of a very real man that lived at a very real time and pursued very real levels of success that so many of us are still chasing after. Would you use his story, I think, to inform our story? That we would not foolishly run down maybe some of the same roads he did without listening to his own wisdom and his counsel. So Holy Spirit, do your work to grab our hearts, to grab our minds, to engage with us at all levels. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So before we go any further, one of the things I want to do, it's part of what it means for us to be a family, is we're going to take up our offering this morning, and we've got people that are going to come down in just a second. They're going to pass out some buckets. We also do it online if you prefer. But I just want to continue to remind you that part of what it means for us as a church is to embody the mission of Jesus, to go. It's not just to come and to enjoy, it is to go. And there's a lot of ways that we go. We go through our service, and we go through our sharing, and we go through our personal missional living. And this is one of the ways that corporately, like a family does. When you're a family, you have values that as a family, you have missions as a family that you contribute to, and this is one of the ways that we as a family of God, as a church family, say, hey, we're in. We're all in and we contribute, and this is part of it. A small part, but it's a part that's important to us. So for those of you that give here, I just want to say thank you. There is not anything that God has enabled us to do that isn't some form of your generosity, whether financially or the time that you give and the effort to serve and all the things that you do. So as the buckets go around, I just want to say thank you to those of you that you're a part of this and you give regularly and consistently. And if you don't, I'd invite you to become like my wife and I and our family. This is a new way that we're using some of what God's placed in our hands in this community to give back as well. And I'm thoroughly proud to be a part of Ridgepoint on every level, including this one. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for how you give, and love to have you give if you're not a part of it with us. So buckets will go around, and do what is right for you to do. All right, here we go. I want to tell you a story really quickly. I'm going to try and make it quick. This is a great story. So many details to it. But this is a story that for me, when I heard years ago, it really captured a picture of what it looks like, I think in many regards, to live a life for what doesn't matter. And in the end, end up accomplishing what Chan said, which is to be successful at things that just don't count. So story takes place right at the end of World War II. Haru Inoto is a Japanese soldier. And less than a year before the war ended, Haru was a part of a small tactical group that was actually dropped into the Philippines. And part of their mission was basically sabotage. So they were kind of guerrilla warfare. So they were dropped into the woods, and their mission was, under the cover of night and secrecy, is to do everything they could to disrupt the enemy. Whether it was supply lines, fields where crops were being grown for the enemy, whether it was attacking troops, attacking military sites, whatever it was, their job, sneak out when they weren't seen, create chaos, create destruction, and then go hide. And they were good at what they did. They were so good, as a matter of fact, that at the end of the war, nobody could find them. So the Japanese military tried to find them, sent people in. They literally could not find these guys. So over time, they would start dropping leaflets over the forest saying, hey, war's over, you can come out of hiding now. And so the story was that they would get these leaflets, they would read them, and they would conclude together, this small group of men, that it was all propaganda, it was lies, that it was actually just the enemy trying to coax them out into the open so that they could take care of him. So they continued their mission. And they became a presence and a reputation, like a horrible one, in the area they were at in the Philippines, where they would still come out after the war had ended, and they would attack, they would maim, they would harm. And so there was this reputation that there are these soldiers somewhere out there in the woods that are hurting us and harming us, and we've got to get these guys out of here. And so there was multiple campaigns to try and find them, all of which failed until a journalist decided he was going to do it. So he put together a small group of people, other journalists, some historians, even a few former military personnel from the Japanese Empire, and they go over to the Philippines and try to find these soldiers, and they did. Only at this point, enough time had passed that there was one left, and it was Haru. All the rest of his men had died. Either they had succumbed to sickness or just the difficulty of living out in the wilderness, or even in some of the raids that they made where they would exchange gunfire with civilians at this point. And so Haru is the only one left. And he was able to be coaxed out enough to entertain the message that the war was over, but didn't believe it and said, I'm not going to actually respond to this and believe this unless my officer from during World War II comes back and tells me that the war is over. Here's the problem. At this point, it's 30 years later. Now, his officer was still alive, actually, so they were able to get his officer, bring him to the woods, have a conversation, and coax Haru out. So it wasn't long after that they walked him out of the woods. He ends up showing up to the government, and he presents in this picture his sword as a sign of surrender. But again, I'm going to say it one more time. 30 years later. He went into the military at 19 years old. Some of you have kids that age. We got 22-year-old and 18-year-old girls. Like trying to imagine this kid at 19 going into this war, and then for the next 30 years after it had ended, continued to fight the war. So after he surrenders his sword and realizes, man, the war is over, he goes back to Japan, but he goes back to a very different Japan, as you can imagine, than what he left 30 years earlier. So he's kind of disgusted with Japan. He doesn't like the fanfare that he receives when he goes home, and so he decides to leave, and he moves to Brazil. And in Brazil, he gets married, he starts a family, and he becomes a cattle rancher. He has a whole ranch that he develops and raises cattle, and so he's in Brazil. But while he's in Brazil, he's reading and hearing stories about back home. He's still keeping in touch and listening and learning. And all the things that he's hearing about the Japan that is breaking his heart because it's not the Japan that was. And one story that kind of pushed him over the edge was a young man, teenage guy back in Japan who got in an argument with his parents and then killed his parents. And so he felt like that's indicative of a bigger problem in the place I left, and I have to be a part of the solution. So he moves back to Japan, and part of moving back to Japan was to figure out how can I make a better difference specifically in the lives of young men and women. And so he started these groups called the Anoto Outdoor Camps, or nature survival camps, where he took much of what he had learned over the years of living in the wilderness and in the wild and began to teach it to kids how to survive and survival tactics, but ultimately for the underpinning desire of taking these marginalized, at-risk, fringe kids and giving them something to live for, giving them compassion, giving them relationship, giving them a place where they can be known and be safe. And here's why I tell you a story, because it makes me wonder, if you strip away the extreme realities of war and 30 years and all that, how many people right now are living their lives a little bit like Haru? Where your bullseye of success, you're nailing it, but it's the wrong bullseye. And you're living your life for what really doesn't matter. In the end, what really won't matter. Because, I mean, you talk about success, he was killing it, right? I mean, nailing it. He stayed his post, he fulfilled his obligations, he did the tactics, like he did what he was supposed to do, to the last man standing, but for no reason. Because he believed a lie, and that lie was the war was still happening. And had he stayed in that jungle and not come out, it would have been to the neglect of all of the kids that were served by him through the camps that he would eventually start. So how many of us are possibly at risk of living our lives in a very similar way? We're kind of out in the jungle. And the way that we're living and the things that we're living for that we think matter most, the truth is one day if something doesn't change and we don't have somebody call us out of the jungle to live for a better purpose, then we'll miss the greater purpose that we have been made for. Like Haru would have if nobody would have ever coaxed him out of those woods. Again, Francis Chan. The greatest fear in life should not be of failure, but of succeeding at things that just don't matter. I think one of the things that is good about life, though, is that there are these moments we have opportunities thrown at us that give us a chance to kind of reevaluate. Like, what am I living for? The moment came 30 years later for Haru, but there was a moment that he was given to think, like, okay, well, I'm not living for what really matters, clearly, so I need to pivot. I need to redirect my life. And we get those same kind of things, right? Smaller scale, not 30 years, hopefully not. But we get the same kind of moments throughout life that give us opportunity to pause and think, man, what am I living for? Who am I living for? Is what I'm living for, does it really matter right now? It happens in some of the tragic moments of funerals. You know, when people pass away and we sit at a funeral, there's usually the funeral effect where you have a moment where you start thinking, like, what really matters? Who really matters? Am I doing what really matters? Should I call the person I haven't called in a while? But here's what happens. You leave and you go right back 3-4 days later to what is and what's been. I've done it. You've done it. This last week, 3 different funerals of people that I know and love happened. One of them I was at, and it, again, is that moment where you go, man, maybe I should, and think differently, and then it's just, boom, you're swooped right back up into the rest of life and life as usual. And sometimes it's not just extreme events. Sometimes it's just there are moments in life that give us the opportunity to reevaluate that aren't necessarily the sad, extreme things like a funeral, like changes. I remember a few years ago when my son moved out, when he was about to get married. He's been married 2 years now, and right when he moved out, what I was not prepared for is how many times I'd walk by his bedroom and just get choked up. Like, ugh. But it started to reframe things. Like that change in my life started to reframe some of what I thought about in terms of what does my life count for? What do I want my life to count for? What am I doing with my life? Who am I? Again, I would say my wife Nicole and I, we're in that season right now more than we've ever been. I think it's safe to say in almost 30 years of being together, we're going through more change right now than we've ever been through. And it's making us ask things. It's making us think different. Like even yesterday, I was at Costco on the other side of the state picking some stuff up before I came out here. And I'm like walking through Costco, and I was told her this last night when she got there. I was like, I started getting all weepy at Costco. I was like, oh, we won't have our Saturday routine at Costco with the freebie stuff. And she's like, babe, you know they had Costco over here too. I'm like, I know, it's not the same. And like, it's just like, it's all the change right now is putting me again in a place where I'm going, man, what does my life really count for? And what am I doing? And so I feel like I'm asking a couple of questions that are necessary for me to ask. Like number one is, what do I want to do right now that 5 years from now I'm going to regret if I don't give attention to it? Like there are things that 5 years from now I don't want to look back at and go, wow, I wish I would have, but I didn't. But I feel like the change is giving me an opportunity to ask those questions. I've got a book that for years I've had a vision to write. I feel like God really said, here's an idea and I want you to write this. I've gotten about 100 pages in and I've stopped because just the busyness of life. I don't want 5 years from now to tell you I'm still at 100 pages. But I'm also asking questions about me, not just what do I do, but who am I? I don't want the Craig right now to be the same Craig 5 years from now. But it's really easy to just get in the grind of life and neglect. But I feel like the change and the disruption in our life right now is forcing me to go, okay, who do I really want to be 5 years? So it's great when we have these moments. The problem is, do we always take full advantage of them? I feel like our world had one of these moments a couple years ago that we've never had before in our lifetime. And it was through COVID. Regardless of what you think of COVID, I mean, the reality is it gave us a chance to pause and to ask better questions, different questions. It's an article written by New York Times, I believe, titled, "What Will Success Look Like Post-Pandemic?" And they did this huge research on an article on just all the effects of COVID and how it's going to change our lives, how it might change our lives. And I just want to give you a couple of paragraphs that I thought were pretty insightful. The pandemic provided the world with an opportunity to take time out and to reflect on what truly matters. This even brought on what's been called the onslaught of the Great Resignation, where so many, maybe some of us, decided, man, I'm not working for a job I don't like anymore, and it's just meaningless, and so many people quit during COVID as a result of just asking different questions. Only a few years ago, we would have said that success means earning a lot of money, having a big house, nice cars, traveling the world, a summer home in the Hamptons, and all of the trappings that signify that you have, quote, made it. Success, at least for this moment, doesn't feel defined solely by our bank accounts or our investment portfolios. People are starting to reflect on what they want to do in their professional lives, not what they have to do. We're collectively questioning everything. There seems to even be a consensus that we don't want to go back to how things used to be and how we used to define success. COVID has made us contemplate our lives differently. And this entails what type of person you want to become and the job and the career that you want to have and what sense of purpose and meaning will mark your life. Most people have come to the conclusion that life here on this earth is too precious and fleeting. And since we only have limited time here, it's important to make the best of it. And so the question on the other side of COVID will be, did we collectively redefine success to be a life lived for things that matter more? This was written right at the tail end of COVID. It was still happening, but it was like the end was in sight. And so my question would be what his question was, did we? Did we use that to actually reframe what we define as success for ourselves and in relationship with other people? And I would say, I think we started to. And then as soon as we started to go back to normal, I think we stopped. I think many of us just went, myself included, right back to what was familiar and comfortable, and we stopped asking the better and the bigger questions about what do I really want my life to be marked by? And again, the problem is, how do we even define it? Because it's super confusing when you talk about success when you have so many different definitions. Matter of fact, official definition, this is from Webster. Webster says this is success: someone or something that is successful. A person or a thing that succeeds. Great, thank you, Webster. I could have wrote that. I remember, weren't we all taught as kids you can't define a thing with a thing? The only reason you define a thing with a thing is if you don't understand the thing. And I would suggest we don't understand the thing. Like, we really don't understand what success is, and we have such wildly different conclusions of it that we're all running around never attaining it. And part of the reason is we don't know how to define it. Thankfully, we do have a few analogies that help at least give a visual picture. Usually when we talk about success, we frame it in this language: climbing the what? Good. Glad you got that. Because that would have been weird if I'm holding one and you didn't. Now, here's the thing. There's all kinds of ladders in life to climb. And they start really young. This is actually a stool with my son's name on it, and those are, in fact, his real feet that a friend of ours had put on there when he was little. And I'll never forget, like, this was his first goal in life, is using this stool to get up and look over the sink. Kid's 6'2" now, he got no problems looking over the sink. But from a very early age, we start learning how to climb certain ladders to achieve certain accomplishments. And those accomplishments become rungs up the ladder that we can go. And then as you start to get older, you get into elementary school, you get into high school, it's not just accomplishments, it's also acquisitions. It's the things that you get, it's the things that you do. And you start climbing different ones. Like, I remember as a kid, when I was a kid and I was young, man, part of the rung on the ladder, it was G.I. Joe, Star Wars. Who could have the better figures or the bigger stuff? Like, if you had the 5-foot aircraft carrier for G.I. Joe, any of you have that? Man, your life was meaningless like mine was, I guess. Jeez. Like, I mean, but if you had the aircraft carrier, you went up like 3 rungs on the ladder immediately. You were the dude in the neighborhood. Like, you just mattered more. And so we start defining our lives by how much we can get up the ladder. And then you get older and you move from elementary school and from high school, and then you start moving into your career. And now you're framing it around different things, but you're still climbing a ladder. It's around the job that you have, the income level you have, the spouse that you get, the neighborhood you live in. And so we start this life very early on that most of us don't even take the time to realize we're stuck in the jungle, like Haru, just going up a ladder that doesn't matter. Because this is what the world tells us where success will be found is at the top of this thing. And so we define it in all different kinds of ways. And here's the thing. There are some practices in life even where you might go, oh, I can get to the top of the ladder. There are some professions where you do get all the way up to the ladder. The problem is you get all the way up and you realize, I need a taller ladder. Matter of fact, I would suggest that maybe one of the jobs in the world, one of the areas in the world that has a ladder that you can get to the top of, that if you get up here, man, you've arrived, would be probably actors, Hollywood, right? Because it's a little bit of everything. You got the finance, you got the fame, you got the notice, the recognition, you've got kind of all the things. So am I making any of you nervous? Oh, it's fine. So a couple years ago, Jim Carrey at the Golden Globes, he was presenting the award. Now, Jim Carrey, again, I mean, I would say that guy's hit the top of the ladder in his field, right? Here's what he does at the Golden Globes. Standing in front of all the people that have hit the top of that ladder, here's what he says to them. Well, thank you. I am two-time Golden Globe winner, Jim Carrey. You know, when I go to sleep at night, I'm not just a guy going to sleep. Thank you. I am two-time Golden Globe winner, Jim Carrey, going to get some well-needed shut-eye. And when I dream, I don't just dream any old dream. No, sir, I dream about being three-time Golden Globe winning Jim Carrey. Now, here's where he kind of pivots, and I think he's starting to kind of say to the room, hey, see our own foolish pursuit. Because then I would be enough. It would finally be true. And I could stop this terrible search. What's he saying? If your success, your purpose, your meaning is found up here, you won't find it. Now, some of you might go, okay, so I shouldn't accomplish anything in life? Would I be a hermit? Do I sell everything I own? Do I do nothing else? No more checklists? No more? No, not at all. As a matter of fact, this is a room with some very accomplished people that have done some incredible things. You have stuff, you've done things, you have recognition. I'm not saying that's bad. I would actually suggest that sometimes maybe our sights aren't set high enough. Let me give you one more quote. This is from C.S. Lewis. Lewis once said this: "It would seem that our Lord finds that our desires are not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures fooling around with drink and sex and ambition, when infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased." You're like, okay, so I'm supposed to try and achieve success, or I'm not? Yeah, this isn't like don't try and be successful. This is for the right thing. Because here's the problem. There's some ladders you can get to the top of and realize even when you get to the top of it, you leaned it against the wrong wall. And so what I want to do this morning is I want to look at a guy in the Bible who there's an account of his life who is probably, there is no more accomplished, successful, wealthy king of Israel that ever reigned than this man. His name was Solomon. And when Solomon began his reign, what's interesting and recorded in the Bible is a conversation between he and God, where God asked him basically, what do you want as a part of your reign? And instead of asking for all the stuff of the ladder, he said, here's what I want. I want wisdom. And so here's the conversation, because it really lays kind of groundwork to what happens in Solomon's life. The book of 1 Kings, chapter 3. And so God said to him, since you have asked for this, which is the wisdom, and not for a long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. And I will give you a wise and a discerning heart, so that there will never be anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me and keep my decrees and my commands as David your father did, I will give you a long life. And God made good on that promise. God not only gave him wisdom, but gave him wealth, gave him renown, gave him everything. There was no ladder that this guy didn't have. There was no ladder top that he did not achieve and get to. But in fact, you just take wisdom alone. Throughout the Bible, there's about 1,000 wise sayings of Solomon, just in the scriptures. Outside of the Bible, there's also collections of other books of just his wisdom and his insight into life. There are people from all around the world, other kings, other rulers, other lands, that would come to him. So not just his own people that he ruled over, but other people in other nations that came to him and sought out his wisdom and his discernment and his insight on matters. Like, he was genuinely seen as somebody whose wisdom you wanted, whose advice you wanted. Like, he was, among all the rulers of his time, he was the wisest of them. And wealth, do you know there's only one thing in all of Solomon's kingdom that he was ever rumored to run short on, and it was wood. And it was wood because of all the trees they had to cut down to make the wheelbarrows to carry his jewels and gold. Like, this guy had no shortage of money, no shortage of just being smart and wise and discerning and shrewd. And then there was accomplishments. There are things that Solomon set his hand to develop, to create, to build, that's still being some of them studied to this day. Accomplishments like forts and cities and ports and mines and highways and shipyards, as well as the first temple in Jerusalem. And then you add to that, if you know his story, you know this detail as well, the fact that he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. So not the promise that God made to him, but he kind of added that one into the mix for himself. So I think you can suggest he was not only the wisest and not only the richest and not only the most accomplished, but probably, pardon me, the most sex-driven king of all time. Like the guy had everything. He literally had every ladder. And what he does in the book of Ecclesiastes is he sets out with one mission. Can I climb enough of these or high enough that it will give me a sense of success, satisfaction, sustainability in my personhood, meaning, purpose? Like, can it be found just on these ladders and so he did. I mean, he climbed every ladder he could think of and got to most of the top, and he came back with one conclusion. And here's what it is. The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1. The words of the teacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Read the next verse out loud, would you? Well, there's your joy for the day. Good grief. You read through the rest of his book, and in many ways, it almost reads like a 1990s emo artist, like a little bit dark, a little bit cynical, a little bit jaded. But this is what he's doing, is he's literally laying out all these ladders and saying, can I get high enough on these ladders to find success? And his conclusion at the top of all of them, and it's why he began his book this way, is I got there, I climbed it, and it didn't matter. And he goes on and he says this, what do people gain from all of their labor at which they toil under the sun? That phrase, under the sun, is significant. He says, generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets, but it hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and it turns to the north, and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place that the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, and so more than one can say, the eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its hearer filling. What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. One of the problems with the ladder is this. I'm simply going to call it the lie of the rungs. The lie of the rungs is that all I need in life is to get one more rung. Because few of us actually believe that here's what I need. I need to go from the top to the bottom now. And what do we believe? I just need to get to the next rung. If I'm here, I just need to get to here. But then when you're here, what do you need? You need to get to here. And then when you're here, what do you need? And that's where the ladder lies to us. Because the ladder will never tell you is good enough is enough, live with what you have. The ladder will always say more, keep going. So what I want to do is I want to look at a couple of ladders. There's many, but we're only going to look at 3 that Solomon tried to climb. Because I think they're 3 of the ladders that we desperately still try to climb. And you can do one of a few things with this. You can either go, you know, it doesn't matter. This guy lived thousands of years ago. I don't care what he had to say. I'm going to keep climbing my ladders and try for myself. Okay, you can. And here's the reality. At the top of the ladder, the disappointment and the pain will be yours. Or wisdom for us could be to listen to a guy that has more than any of us will ever have, climbed higher than any of us will ever climb, and learn from what it is that he said. Because here's what I just know. You're going to agree with something that I say today, most likely, most of us. And maybe some of you will even agree with a lot of what I say. But then here's what's going to happen. All of us are going to go back into the world this week, myself included, and the ladder's going to start lying to us. And we're going to go right back into the woods. And my hope and my prayer is that today will be your 30-year mark for some of you, where you'll be called out of the woods like Haru was, to live for a different purpose than what the ladder would have you to believe is success and meaning. First ladder we go up is the ladder of money. The ladder of money, where we believe we just got to keep getting higher and higher on this ladder. Now again, Solomon only ran short of one thing in his kingdom. What was it again? Yeah, wood, because he had so much money from building so many wheelbarrows, he had no more trees left. Now, when you have lots of money, we all have a tendency to put some of that money into something that becomes a reflection of how high we've gotten on that ladder, whether it's your house, your car, your hobbies, whatever it is. We all have a tendency to take portions of our money and put it in something that becomes a reflection. A king does the same thing. One of those things is his throne. And Solomon had a throne among thrones. There was no throne in the ancient world like Solomon's throne. Matter of fact, his throne had 6 steps on it to get up to the seat. So immediately, if you were looking at Solomon, you had to look up and he had to look down. It was right away. It was an indication of the fact that he's higher up on the ladder than you. On those 6 steps all the way up the ladder, there were animals that faced each other. On one side, it was a lion. On the other side, it was a golden eagle that faced off at each other as he would climb the stairs. Then there was, I want you to hear this, a series of mechanisms that I want to read that would happen as he would walk up the steps. There were mechanical tricks that allowed that when the king reached the first step, an ox would stretch its leg out forth, on which Solomon leaned. A similar action would then take place with each animal on each step as he made his way up. From the 6th step, there were eagles that would raise the king and place him in his seat, near which a golden serpent would lay coiled. And when the king seated and was sat down, the large eagle then placed a crown on his head. There was also a serpent that would uncoil itself, and the lions and the eagles would move upward to form shade over top of him. There would then be a dove that would descend from the chair, and he would take the scroll of the law of the ark and place it on Solomon's knees. When the king sat to judge the people, the wheels began to turn, and the beasts and the fowls would utter their respective cries, which frightened those who had intended to bear false witness to the king. Moreover, while Solomon was ascending the throne, the lions would scatter all kinds of fragrant spices. Now, let me just suggest, if you have a custom lazy boy made out of gold that takes 6 steps to get up to the top of, and when you sit down, it spits out incense and then it growls at your children when they lie to you, you probably have a little bit of money to waste. And this is Solomon. I mean, this guy has money on top of money on top. There isn't a higher, he's gotten to the top of the ladder. And here's what he concludes about all of it on your screen. Those who love money will never have enough. Now, I would just assume that most of us will go, I don't love money, I just use it. I see its value, I use it. Why? Do you know how you know if you love money? If your heart is captured up in it? Do you feel like you got enough of it? Because that's his indication. He says, if there's this tension you feel of, I just never have enough, then there's something about your heart that's been captivated with the wrong thing. Those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. The more you have, the more people come to help you spend it. So what good is wealth except perhaps to watch it slip through your fingers? People who work hard sleep well, whether they eat little or much, but the rich seldom get a good night's sleep. There is another serious problem I've seen under the sun. Hoarding riches harms the saver. Money is put into risky investments that turn sour, and everything is lost. In the end, there is nothing left to pass on to one's children. We all come to this end of our lives naked and empty-handed as the day that we were born. We can't take our riches with us. Now, I know that we know this. Like we know, we come into the world naked, we don't bring anything with us when we leave this world. But here's what I'd say, do we know it? I mean, we know it, but this thing lies, and it is so convincing. And so often what we know is not what we experience. There was a study that was done a couple years ago on a group of people whose income ranged from $1,200 a year to $120,000 a year. And everybody was asked separately the exact same question. Here's the question. How much more money do you need to alleviate your current financial stress that you're living under? Here's what's super interesting to me. Nobody gave the exact same dollar amount. Every single person gave the exact same percentage. 10%. And here's why I think it's fascinating. Because nobody said, I need $1 million. Nobody went, I got to jump the whole ladder. What'd they say? I just need a rung. I just need one more rung. Just another 10%. Just a little bit more. But what's crazy is that means that the person here who said, I just need 10% more, well, guess what the person here that had that 10% more wanted? 10% more. And the person here who had that 10% more, guess what they needed? 10% more. The lie of the ladder. Here's what's not lost on me either. In the scriptures, for us that are followers of Jesus, what does God say when it comes to our money and trusting him is the starting point percentage-wise? It's a tithe, which is 10%. This is not a money message. There's not going to be another offering at the end of the day. I just think you can't overlook the fact that there's something embedded in our heart that lies to us and tells us, I just need 10% more. And that actually happens to be the exact same percentage that the God of creation says, if you will live in a way to trust me, here's all I'm asking for, is 10%. Start there. Isn't that interesting that those two numbers seem to be in conflict? I'll tell you what, you want to learn how to make the grip of stuff and money release itself on you, you got to release your grip on it first. And I love that God doesn't say, give me everything you've got. He goes, 10%. Can you trust me with a rung? And at the same time, there's a lie embedded in our heart for some reason that says, actually, I need that next rung for myself. Solomon says, I got there all the way to the top and it was meaningless. If you believe that will define you, will satisfy you, will sustain you, is found up here with your finances. And Solomon says at the top of this, it's meaningless. And maybe you would even say, man, meaningless is just so strong. Okay, some translations take the word meaningless from the Hebrew and turn it into frustrating. So if you wouldn't say meaningless, would you at least admit to me that oftentimes life is frustrating? Yeah, and why is it frustrating? Because of the lie of the rungs. Do you realize that it is the pursuit in between these rungs that creates so much of the frustration of life? And the more that we pursue it, thinking if I just get to the next rung, that's why Solomon says meaningless at the end. So if it's not money, here's what it is for some of us. It's accomplishments. It's the things that we can do. It's the lie of the if-then, right? If I can just accomplish this, then. And that might be related to your job. It might be a relational if-then. If I just get married, or if my kid's just this, or there's some accomplishment in our mind that we just think, if I can get to the top of the accomplishment ladder, then I will have a sense of success. Well, again, Solomon did. I mean, this guy climbed all the ladders of things that you can build and accomplish and be known for and renowned for and famous for. And he said, you know what, in the end, it didn't matter when I was trying to find happiness and success at the top of that ladder. Again, go back to the text. Here's what we read, chapter 2. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself. I plant houses. I mean, he's got his house. He's got vacation houses. He's doing it. He's building it. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves and flourish trees. I watered my lawn once. He's watering whole groves and reservoirs. I mean, he's building things. Skip over to verse 11. It says this, when I surveyed all that my hand had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind, and nothing was gained under the sun. There's that phrase again, under the sun. He says, literally, I built it. I accomplished it. And in the end, he was trying to grab hold of the wind. It didn't do anything. You know, this is why even Jesus would one day say that everything in the earth will one day pass away. So much of what we're living for in this world to define what is success up this ladder is one day, I said it last week, I'll say it again, it's going to end up in one of two places, a dump or a grave. It's going to rust and turn to dust. And Solomon says, I know because I built it all. And it didn't satisfy me. This is why we also hear stories all the time of people that have gotten to the top of their ladder. Movie stars, politicians, athletes, fill in the blank, whatever sphere, that at the top of that ladder, they end up taking their lives. Because they think, once I get up there, and the problem is, it's the lie of the ladder. They keep going and going and going and going and going, and either they get up there and find out even up here at the top is meaningless, or they realize there's no top, and so they cannot deal with life anymore. Because the lie of the ladder has them believe I just got to keep going up. And then when they get there, they realize there's actually nothing here. And Solomon says, I got there, and I'll report back to you. If that's your pursuit for success in this world, it's going to be meaningless. And then here's the last one that I think he lays to, that again, so often we do as well. Pleasure and image. Go back to the text, and here's what we read. Verse 1 of chapter 2. I said to myself, come now, and I will test you with pleasure, to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. My mind still guided me with wisdom. And I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their life. Verse 10. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. Did you imagine having the means and the ability to say anything I desire, I can have it? Well, that's what he did. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired, and I refused my heart no pleasure. So he's saying, hey, everything in this world that could be pleasurable, I got it. If I wanted to throw the party, I threw the party. If I wanted to throw an event, I threw an event. If I wanted to build a monument, I built a monument. If I wanted to build a garden, I built a garden. If I wanted to build 4 more houses, I built 4 more houses. If I wanted to sleep with them, I slept with them. Like he just said, I consumed everything of desire in this world. And at the top, meaningless. And I'm just concerned, especially in our culture. And I do think that there are different realities in different cultures in terms of how we're impacted and affected. And I think in our culture, Western culture, I think this is one that is particularly unique in some ways to us. There is still so much belief, a lie, but a belief nonetheless in us that says, if I just acquire the right kind of pleasure, then I can have the right kind of life, the right kind of success, the right kind of feeling. And that's not all the vices either. It might just be vacations, the bigger house. It's just the things of pleasure in this world. It might be a relationship. There are things that we just decide, if I just experience this, then it will make me happy. And Solomon's like, hey, everything I saw that I wanted, I gave it to myself, and it didn't do it. That ladder failed me. And then if it's not pleasure, it's image. Like you think of Solomon, I mean, there was nobody known more than Solomon in the ancient world. People were reading his books and his blog and his podcast. I mean, they knew him. They wanted him at his parties. Like, they knew this guy. There was no one more renowned than him. And his conclusion was meaningless. And again, this is where I think in the West, this is a unique struggle for us. You know, a couple years ago, Lego did a survey among adolescents in both China and the United States of America. And they asked one question. An attempt to try and figure out what the next toy was that they were going to build. And the question was this: what's your number one desire to become when you grow up? In China, the question was answered overwhelmingly with to be an astronaut. In the United States of America, the same question was answered overwhelmingly to be a social media influencer. I think we got a problem. And I think the problem is we have fallen victim to the lies of the tools of our time. And this is not just a young person problem. Like, don't misunderstand me. You're like, yeah, those kids need to get off their dang phones. You know, this is all of us. Maybe you don't try to portray your image through your iPhone or your Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, but you try to portray it. We all do. Why? Because the ladder will tell you you need to, because that's how people will accept you. That's how you find success, is how they view you. And when we fall victim to that lie, it doesn't matter whether it's on Facebook or just whether it's the house that you have, the right style that you dress in. Like, we all have ways that we try to portray the right image. Where we, just like on Facebook, we want the world to see the perfect version of us while we withhold the real version of us. And again, we fall victim to this idea, if I can just be seen the right way, then I'll have a level of success. And we could list 30 other ladders here today. You're like, well, you didn't hit the one that's really for me. What Solomon said is, whatever your ladder is, I climbed it. And I got to the top of it. And my conclusion from the top is to report back down. Meaningless. And I say I'm thankful that there was somebody that had the means and the resources at any point in history, even though it was ancient history, to say, hey, I'm going to test this for everybody else. I'm going to lay out the ladders, and I'm going to climb them, and I'm going to report back. And his report back was, it's all meaningless. And so what do we do then? You're like, okay, well, if everything here is meaningless, well, I think if you go back to where Solomon began, he was trying right off the bat to tip his hand as to how it is that we should live. And I would say this: it's actually not just the top of the ladder, it's higher than the top of the ladder. You go back to chapter 1, verse 3. What do people gain from all of their labor at which they toil, say it? What? Under the sun. Under the sun. What's under the sun? Us, you, me, the ladder, the stuff of this world, everything that turns to dust and rust. That's the stuff under the sun. What he's saying is, if you're living your life for all the pleasures and the meaning and the purpose and the success that's found under the sun, the temporal here and now, and doing so for the predominant enjoyment and benefit of yourself, meaningless. It's frustrating. It's frustrated. It's meaningless. So if it's meaningless to live for all the things under the sun, what would be the natural opposite? Is to live for the things what? Well, what's above the sun? Well, in ancient time, that's where God would be understood to be, is above the sun. With Jesus and his Holy Spirit, we have a completely different understanding of God and a completely different experience of his presence. That as a follower of Jesus, his presence is where? The same power that rose Jesus from the dead is in you, is in me. Like he's here. But to Solomon's understanding, number one, his awareness of God and his understanding of God would have begun with God up in the heavens, up in the heights, above the sun. Part of what Solomon is saying is you have to figure out how to reorient your life so that it's not the ladder you live for, the stuff under the sun, but it's over the sun. And where does over the sun begin? Give me Jesus. Nothing else in this world matters. You're all I need. You're all I want is where he begins. But then I think it's using the reality of eternity to come to reframe how we live now. And Solomon being aware that this life is not all there is. Matter of fact, if you go over to chapter 3, verse 11, this is what Solomon says. He has made everything beautiful in its time, and he has also set eternity in the human heart, and yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. It's not the only time Solomon would talk about eternity, the reality that this life does not terminate on itself, that there is more. And as Christians, sometimes we can live a little bit too much with our head in the clouds thinking about eternity, where it's almost to the neglect of the world we're in. Even though Jesus said, no, you live in this world. You're just not of it. He never said, no, don't live in it or of it. Just have nothing to do with it. No, you live in it. You just don't live of it. Like, we don't walk around with our head in the clouds like, I just can't wait till heaven because this world is nothing but trash and garbage. He's like, no. I actually gave you things even to enjoy here. But I'm asking you, overlay the reality of eternity onto this world that would help you make better decisions of what you do, why you do it, and who you do it for. So that what you do, why you do, and who you do it for isn't all just so you can get higher up on the ladder and have more stuff and feel like you finally achieved it. So I would give you a couple of questions this morning that I think can help even reframe at times. When we're trying to say, God, how do I live for what's above the sun? For you, for purposes of you, for things that will actually transcend into eternity, not just what will terminate here in this reality. Well, I think question number one, I would say, is a question of person and purpose. The question of purpose would be this: why are you doing this? Like, whatever this is, why are you doing it? And it could be from your job to buying a new car. I'm not saying we don't do these things. I'm asking that we ask ourselves, why am I doing it? And is there a way to reframe everything that we do with an internal perspective and purpose to it? You might go, I don't know. I have a friend named John who's taught me that it is. It is possible. John runs a trucking company back in Detroit. And John has taken this idea to heart so much that his commitment is, I'm going to treat my trucking company like my church. And this guy, they do very well, very successful. I've been to a Christmas party of his that he did with his employees a couple years ago. He gets up in front of a couple hundred employees. His CFO does all the financial stuff for the end of the year. Then John gets up, and John just preaches. Hey, here's how much money we're giving away this year, which makes the CFO kind of pull his hair out. He goes, because we're rescuing men and women out of children out of human trafficking. That's part of our commitment as a company. Here's who Jesus is to me. That's why we're doing this. I know you may not all believe in Jesus. I'll never push him on you, but I want you to know you matter to. And I'm sitting there going, I'm in church right now. And this guy has really said, everything I do is going to get done through the lenses of eternity. I'm going to do it because I believe that this life is not all there is. And my success is not just getting up the ladder. It's why I got up the ladder. And for him, it's so he can love and serve the people around him in the name of Jesus. And he's watching his employees give their lives to the Lord. I think the second question is not just a question of purpose, it's person. Like, who are we doing this for? If the first question is, why am I doing this? Second is, for who am I doing it? And I'll just admit to you, this is probably my hardest one. I grew up the oldest of 7 kids with 2 handicapped parents, and we just scraped by many times throughout my childhood. My wardrobe was hand-me-downs most of the time. And as I got older and I'm off on my own, things matter to me in a way that they just shouldn't, because I didn't have a lot of things growing up. So I know that there is a level of selfishness that exists in my heart that I don't see, for example, in my wife's heart. She's so generous, she gives my stuff away too, But I like my stuff, and being able to do the things I do in life or use the things I have in life for other people is something I have to constantly work at. Because my childhood tells me, no, when you cling to it. You don't do for yourself, because nobody's going to do for you. And so this is a real hard one for me. I got to continue to get off that ladder of lies. It tells me, you just need more stuff for you. But I'll just tell you, you keep asking that question. Why am I doing this, and who am I doing this for? Because if it's just for you, And if it's just to get higher up the ladder, here's what Solomon reported back. What? It's meaningless. So our band's going to make their way out right now. We're going to close with a song this morning. And here's my hope, man. I know we're going to go back out this afternoon. In a house that we pass, a TV ad that we see, something in our world is going to tell us, no. That guy's full of it. You just need more of this. Get up it. And here's what I know about me. And I hate this about myself. I fall victim to this ladder way too much and to its lies. If I go back to where I started saying that 5 years from now I want to be a different version of myself, part of the different version that I hope that God continues to strip away and recreate in me over the next 5 years is that I long for the things of this ladder less and less, replaced with a greater longing for Him. I hate the war in my own heart between my desire for Jesus and my desire for the ladder. But I also don't think I'm alone. And so as we close this morning, here's what I would just ask. As we sing these last words, would you make them more than just a song, but would you make them your cry and your prayer to Jesus? That He would begin to strip away the longing of the ladder and teach our heart that He and He alone is what satisfies. And only what's done for Him, truly what's done for Him, is what truly lasts. Would you stand and sing with us?
I'm caught up in your presence. I just want to sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I just sang another song. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. And I'm sorry when I've come with my agenda. I'm sorry when I forgot that you're enough.
God, I pray that those lyrics would be true to the tune of our heart, is that nothing else will do. We only want you. And I pray that you would continue in the ways that our hearts so easily wander off. Would you bind our wandering hearts to you? Because I do believe, as Solomon would discover and even tell us across time, that there is no greater place to find success and peace and joy and sustainable self-worth than when our hearts are bound to yours. Thank you, Jesus, for your love. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your word that teaches across time and place. And I pray that you would let it do its good work in our heads and our hearts, even in the next couple of days, that something about the scriptures and your truth would just ring inside of our minds, inside of our hearts, and continue to just reorient our eyes and our affection to you. In Jesus' name, amen. So let's go this week and as a people be committed to acknowledge and then ignore the lie of the ladder and live for what's above the sun. Have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.